Hello everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna and here we talk about all things motherhood, the joys, the struggles, everything in between. If you're new to my channel, I kind of have a little series going on talking about embodying the fruit of the spirit in motherhood. I will link those videos here and at the end of this video, and I'll even put them down in the description box, so once this video is over, if you want to go back and look at those, you can. This all started by me having a really terrible day and wanting to have fewer of those terrible days and realizing I need to get a better control of me and my emotions and my soul and my spirit in order to lead and direct and parent the children in my house. I've already done my video about self-control, which means this video is going to be all about gentleness in motherhood. Now, if you're like me, when you hear gentleness in motherhood, you're like, okay, that's like self-explanatory and kind of easy and kind of the definition of motherhood. Motherhood is seen as this gentle, sweet thing, but for all my moms out there, you know that there are a whole lot of moments in motherhood that are anything but gentle and sweet and motherly. And that is what I have been working on, is still applying gentleness in those less than gentle moments. The way I chose to apply this was specifically through emotions, because again, that's kind of why I started this whole journey. I was working on channeling and controlling and using my emotions for the best good. So when I look at gentleness, I see it as a way to help with emotions. How can I be gentle with my children as they're experiencing big emotions? Because children experience the same emotions that adults do without the reference points that we have. Like, I know that my sock slipping down inside my shoe is not a big deal because I've had other life experiences that were bigger deals. But as a 3-year-old, you haven't had a whole lot of big deal experiences, so socks, big deal. And they experience the same emotions that we do, but again, they don't understand when these emotions are appropriate to be expressed or how to express them appropriately and where to express them. They just don't really know anything about emotions. And if you've seen a 2 or 3-year-old or even sometimes 1-year-old expressing their emotions, it's really hard to be gentle in that scenario. Usually, emotional expression comes out in tantrums in children, and tantrums are miserable. I don't know anyone who likes tantrums. I made a video about how I, in general, handle tantrums, and I need to go back and watch that and kind of see, like, how has that changed now that I'm using more gentleness in my parenting. So my goal for these 3 weeks was to apply gentleness specifically to my children and the big emotions that they're experiencing and expressing. I want Heidi and Georgia to have emotional maturity, and gentleness is a great way, I thought, and I think we're getting there. Gentleness, I thought, was a great way to help them express their emotions. Instead of yelling at them and telling them to stuff them down or disciplining them for having emotions or telling them not to cry, I can be more gentle and loving and let them express these emotions. God's timing is perfect. These 3 weeks have gone through a whole lot of tantrums, first of all, and a whole lot of big emotions, because this kind of went over the holidays when children are having way too much sugar and not enough sleep and out of their routine and their schedule. So it was a great time for me to work on my gentleness specifically for those big emotions that they were expressing a whole lot more. And a few other things happened during these 3 weeks that were purely God's timing that really helped me accomplish my goal, which turned out to be way different than I thought it would be. My first plan of attack for gentleness and emotions was to never tell my children not to cry. And I've kind of been implementing this for a long time. I've always thought that I will never tell my children not to cry. I'll never tell them to suck it up or toughen it up. I will never tell them you can't cry right now or you can't express your feelings that way. That was never going to be something that I was doing. So I was like, perfect, I've got this down. I'll just be gentle like I am doing right now and let them express their emotions through tears if they need to. And then I read an article by Scary Mommy that talked about a heartbeat hug. And this, I was like, oh, perfect. This is all about gentleness. This is great. And the idea of a heartbeat hug is that when your child is upset, specifically emotionally, and they're just out of control and you need to calm them down because you can't even communicate with them, you grab your child in a hug and hold them close to your heart and you tell them to listen for your heartbeat. And this does several things. It calms you down because you're hugging and breathing and you're also quiet. It quiets your child down because they have to listen, so that keeps them from screaming and crying. They're listening for your heartbeat. And there are studies that show that you can actually sync up heartbeats. So by listening to your heart, your child will actually slow their heartbeat down to match yours. So it's a really powerful tool and it's soaked in gentleness. So I was like, this this is perfect. I'm gonna use this. And I did. I used it several times over the holidays, and I was like, this is great. It calmed her down. It's so great. And I do. I really think it's a great tool, but what I wasn't doing right, I think, was using it all the time. I used it in every situation. If she was crying, I was going to use this heartbeat hug. But I kind of missed the root of the problem, which was that she was crying about everything. Aaron talked to me one night. He was like, I'm not really sure about that heartbeat hug. I think it's just encouraging her to cry. I was like, but it's okay to cry. I cry. I was really struggling with that. And literally the next day, we had Christmas at my grandparents', and my cousins were there. And one of my cousins married this wonderful woman who has a child that is a little bit younger, I think, than Heidi is. And her parenting has been amazing. It has been such a cool thing to watch her change and how her parenting has developed and grown. And I only see her like a couple times a year, and every time I'm like, man, she is nailing this. And she was just talking spontaneously, and I just happened to hear it really, about how she always thought she would never tell her child not to cry. I was like, yes, amen. I'm there. Have you heard about the heartbeat hug? And I was like getting ideas in my head of what to say and be like, yeah, me too. But then she said something that was like, whoa. She said that she realized that by never telling her son not to cry, she had created a whiny and really cryy child who cried and whined at every opportunity, at every little sign of distress. And I was like, oh, me too. So in my attempt to be gentle with Heidi and her emotions, I wanted her to be emotionally mature, but what I was actually creating was a child that was not emotionally mature, that understood she had emotions, but I didn't actually teach her the right way to handle those. I want her to feel comfortable with her tears and with crying and using that as a way to express emotions, but I failed to teach her that it's not always appropriate to cry about everything, and some things don't warrant crying all the time. And crying isn't the best form of communication for your wants and needs. So I had to get her to a point where she was crying and whining less and talking more. My cousin's words were just spot on, and I watched her as she used that during the rest of the day. Her son came in and was whining and wasn't using any words, and I've seen my daughter do that with a little bit more tears. And she just said, hey honey, instead of whining, can you tell me what you're feeling? And he literally said, I feel sad. And she asked him, why do you feel sad? And he told her why she felt sad, and they were able to deal with it. And I was like, brilliant! In my effort to be gentle and loving, I was not helping out Heidi at all. I was not helping her to actually express her emotions effectively. And I still don't really tell Heidi, you can't cry. I just tell her that crying isn't an effective way to communicate. I can't understand what you need from me or what you want or what's going on or what you're feeling by your tears. You need to be able to move past that and communicate them with words. And so literally immediately that day, I said to Heidi, instead of crying, can you tell me how you're feeling? Can you tell me what emotion you're feeling? And she did. Like, she knows what emotions are. I've talked to her about that, but I never told her that she was supposed to tell me them. So in my quest for gentleness, I kind of created a monster. And I learned that gentleness doesn't just mean giving in to your child. Gentleness is loving them and being kind while you are teaching them the real and potentially hard lessons. So telling my child to talk instead of crying can still be gentle. I can still do that in a gentle way. Gentleness is not so much about what you're doing in your parenting, but more about how you're doing it. I realized I didn't really have to change much of my parenting, just the way in which I did it. Making sure I was using a gentle voice when I wanted to yell or get upset. Making sure I was using a gentle touch when I just wanted to kind of give him a little squeeze. Making sure I was being very loving and kind in my actions and my words, even when it's more instinctual for me to get upset or be loud, because I need to teach them gentleness through my own gentleness. So specifically for the big emotions, I'm pretty much just taking a page from my cousin's book because I think she nailed it. And I'm working on this with Heidi now, and I'm still gentle as we work on this. I still get down to her level, and sometimes I'll still pull her into that heartbeat hug, and you have to be really discerning for that too, to be able to tell, does my child just need to calm down before we can talk about it, or can I ask her right now what her emotions are? I don't want to, and I hate this word, but I don't want to coddle Heidi. I want to teach her to be emotionally strong and intelligent and emotionally resilient too, because she's going to encounter a lot of things in this world that are going to rile up all sorts of emotions, and she needs to be able to handle those in a healthy and effective way. So there are a couple different ways I address Heidi's crying and whining during the day. If we're at home, I will sit down and say, Heidi, this is an effective way of communicating. I don't know what you want or need. Can you please tell me how you're feeling or what you need right now? And sometimes what I've been encountering most recently is that she says, no, I can't. So at the same time, I have to teach her that she is in charge of her body and her words and her tears, and she is in charge of that. I tell her, Heidi, you can tell me how you're feeling and then I can help you, but I can't help you if I don't know what's wrong. I can get her to a place where she will say, I'm feeling angry and sad. And she started to do that on her own. I've noticed a couple times where she's come to me and told me, I feel angry and sad, or I feel scared, instead of crying like she normally would. And that's just been amazing. Like, I have reduced the amount of time she's crying during the day, which is healthy for everyone in the family, honestly. But I am not telling her she can't cry. Sometimes I'll tell her, maybe you just need to cry it out and you'll feel better. But let's do that in a place that's safe and comfortable for you, where you don't lash out at other people, whether that be the couch or whether that be her bedroom, and I will move her to a safer, more kind of contained location. But not often does she actually need to continue crying. Most of the time she'll tell me how she feels or what she wants and needs, and we'll talk it through and she'll be fine. Because she does have quite a bit of intelligence, we're just working on that emotional intelligence. If, however, she is having a tantrum or a breakdown or crying or whining in public, I will tell her this is not an appropriate way to communicate. At home, it's not an effective way, and sometimes it's not appropriate at home too, but I tell her specifically it's not effective. So she knows it's not effective. In public, I tell her it's not appropriate, because it's not. Socially, it's not appropriate or acceptable to cry and whine in public, and that's just the way it is. Is that right? I don't know, you can decide. Sometimes I think we need to cry more in public and be more open about our emotions. But at the same time, you're not going to keep a job if you're throwing tantrums in that job. And so to teach her that, I tell her, honey, this isn't an appropriate time to be whining and crying. Can we talk about it instead? And if we need to cry it out, which sometimes, if you're like me, you just need a good cry and you'll feel better, can we keep that in until we get out of the public? Can we keep that until the car? Or could you even just try crying silently? There are different methods we can use, but teaching her when it's appropriate to cry and display those emotions rather than just letting her cry all the time. And I know this can kind of be like a touchy subject because I don't want to suppress my child in the way they express their emotions, and I want her to feel comfortable crying, and it's our society that's wrong. We should be able to cry all the time. But truly, crying all the time isn't very emotionally mature, child or adult, no matter the society. We cannot cry all the time because it's not an effective means of communication. We have to talk it through to people. We have to communicate with our words and with our language. So feel what you want to feel about telling your kid not to cry in certain places, but to me, it is really important for me to teach Heidi when and when it is not appropriate to cry. Because there are times when it's not appropriate to cry, and she needs to be able to identify those times and then be able to calm herself down and use her words to express how she's feeling instead of her tears. So I know this has kind of gone off tracks as far as gentleness. Like I said, I was really focusing my gentleness towards the emotions my children had and helping them work through them. And so I kind of just like went on the emotion train and kind of just forgot about gentleness in general. So I will continue to be working on gentleness just as I continue to work on self-control. But like I said, gentleness is more how you do things than what you do. But what I learned about emotional parenting and teaching my children to be emotionally mature was really mind-blowing. And the coolest thing about this little gentleness journey I went on, my gentleness does not have to undermine my parenting. Gentleness does not mean I have to change my parenting tactics to ones that are overly emotional or tactics that give my control to the child because I just want to be gentle with them. I can still be gentle while having hard rules and regulations and discipline and things we have to do and structure. I can have gentleness in all of that, and that's what I learned the most. I thought to be gentle, I had to change ways that I parented. I thought I had to change how I reacted with my children. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to make a change. And like I did, I needed to make a change to what would seem to be a less gentle approach, but because it's less emotional does not mean it's less gentle. And that I think was the biggest deal for me. Gentleness does not equal emotional. Gentleness just means not harsh, being kind. even when you're doing something that's hard, or even when you're doing something that could be seen as mean. Your kids are going to see you as a mean mom, but that should be because of your rules and not because of the way you talk to them or the way you act with them. So that's been my journey with gentleness, kind of what I've discovered. Like I said, I kind of went off the rails and learned a whole lot, but it's been so cool and just great to see God's timing, and just a huge thank you and shout out to my cousin because she has helped me so much without even knowing it. For the next 3 weeks now, I'm going to be working on faithfulness in parenting. And this one's really intriguing to me because I feel like faithfulness isn't something that inherently can apply to parenting, because you think of faithfulness as just being like towards God or sometimes your spouse. So I'm really excited to look up faithfulness in the scriptures, see what the authors of scripture say about it, see what God's word says about faithfulness, and see how I can apply that to my parenting. It would be awesome if some of you guys wanted to join me for this. I had someone join me for the 3 weeks of gentleness, so I challenge you to join me for 3 weeks of faithfulness. 3 weeks of being faithful in your parenting, whatever that means to you. Do your research, figure it out. Be faithful as a mother. So that about wraps it up. I'm really loving this Fruit of the Spirit series. I hope you guys are enjoying it too. I know this might not be like the most hot topic that's gonna get all the hits on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, but it's important. It's important to keep working on ourselves as mothers and keep developing who we are and how we parent, and improving ourselves as humans and women, and also ourselves as mothers, so we can be a good example to our children. So thank you for watching these videos. I hope you do enjoy them. If you do, please hit that like button, and then consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you can be notified every time I post. I will be posting more in this Fruit of the Spirit series about every 3 weeks, so you'll want to be subscribed so you can get those videos when they come out. Thank you again for all your support. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!